Hi everyone, and welcome to the next video in our course, Beginner's Basics for FreeCAD 0.22, or what will be known as FreeCAD version 1. In the previous exercise, we used a number of tools in the Sketcher and part design, including geometry tools, Sketcher constraints, and part design operations to complete a basic drilled shim. In this exercise, we'll learn some new tools, which I've added to the list. We'll still use some of those previous tools that we used in the previous exercise, but this time we're increasing complexity of the model to create a circular locking flange. So I hope you're enjoying this course, and let's have a look how we create this model. If you like what you see and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via Ko-Fi or Ko-Fi at ko-fi.com/MANG0 or via PayPal at paypal.com/paypalme/DarrenBEstone. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. So let's first start looking at the object as though it was in front of us in real life. So if I had this in my hands, I will be looking around it, looking at it from the different profiles. I have the technical drawing on the right, and a 3D view of the object on the left. We see the most complex view is the top profile, looking at it from the top. The simpler view is from the front or the side. We see that it forms a kind of T shape. First, we simplify the object, removing these curved corners. These are known as fillets. We end up with something like this. If we think back to the previous videos, we can see that this bottom part and this top part, if these were in silhouette, they would resemble rectangles. So from the side, it looks like there's two rectangles placed on top of each other. This leads us to extrudes. We can see the object is being built up in layers, so one rectangle on top of another. So we can create our first base feature, which is this profile, extrude it, and then add our second feature and extrude it again. This leads us to two profiles. Determining the profiles, we can see we have from the top view of a circle with 4 holes, and then this part here would just be a simple ring profile extruded up, or in this case a pad as we use in the part design. If we look at the bottom, then we can keep to the pads by creating this ring profile and extruding it from this face. But there's another operation that makes this a lot simpler. Rather than creating a ring profile, we can create this circle inside and use something called a pocket. And we'll be learning that operation in this video. As you can see from the technical drawing, we have this void in here, which is this. In this video, we're also going to learn about construction geometry and how that will differ from normal geometry and ways we can use that tool in our sketches. As well as the pocket operation, we're going to be looking at the fillet, applying that operation to your models to create a more aesthetically pleasing model. To start our modeling, I've already opened FreeCAD. I've created a new document. I've used the drop down and selected the part design. And I'm using the touchpad control, this one here. We're in the part design to create a solid model. So I'm going to use the create body, the container for the model, and then I'm going to create a sketch. Our first profile is looking down on the object from the XY plane, our most complex profile. Click the XY plane on the left hand side and hit OK. Navigation cube on the right will flip round to the top, and we can start our modeling. I will be using the circle. On the right, we can see a drop down that shows the different types of circles that can be created. Click on the circle, panel on the left will change, and our mouse pointer will show the tool by the side. If I look down under the constraints, we have a drop down just here. This has a number of options. We have the auto constraints checked and the auto remove redundants. Click off, and if we accidentally drop the tool, then we can hit escape on the keyboard to cancel, or right mouse button. Hover over in that center point the point becomes highlighted, and we see we're going to constrain coincident to that point from the mouse pointer. Click, and I'm going to type in 100 millimeters for the outside dimension and hit enter. Now it looks like the circle has disappeared. We look down to the bottom right, we see our scaling is at 147 by 100 millimeters. If I come up and click on this fit all, this fits all of the sketch to the screen. So you can see that the radius has gone out to 100 millimeters. Now we actually want the diameter, not the radius. So if I hit escape, we can edit this. We can double click on this constraint. Rather than typing 100 millimeters for the radius, let's type in 50. At any time we can change this constraint by clicking on it and hitting delete on the keyboard, and either selecting the circle and adding the constraint, or click on some blank space, make sure nothing's selected, come into the constraints, drop this one down and select constraint diameter. And we'll select the circle and we can type in 100 and hit OK. Our constraint is still active, so we can add constraints to other geometry. Let's right click to cancel that. We're going to add circles, some more circles now. I'm going to constrain these with the point and object constraint by hovering over the vertical line, the vertical axis. Click, drag out, and we'll just drop that in. We'll do the same, not adding constraints. The horizontal, again to the vertical, this time at the bottom. Doesn't matter what size these are. And to this one here. I'm going to right click to cancel the tool, and now I'm going to add diameter constraints to all of these. By selecting all of them, just by clicking on them, we don't have to touch anything on the keyboard, we add them to the Hungary selection. We can then use a constraint. Come up and use the diameter tool. By clicking on the diameter tool while these are all selected, an equality constraint is added to each of these, as you can see the equals here, and we can add a dimension. We add the dimension of 15 millimeters and hit OK, and it's applied to one, and the equality constraint takes over all the rest. We can still see these have degrees of freedom. So if you look at this, we've got 4 degrees of freedom. If we click that, it highlights all the points that are not locked down. So you can see we have degrees of freedom this way, and also degrees of freedom this way. So we need to set all of these at a position. We could come in and set some height in here for each of these, but there is an easier way. We're going to use something called construction geometry. Now, construction geometry is just for that, construction. So we'll select the circle, hover over the center point, make this coincident, and drag the circle out. So before I drop this, I'm going to come up and connect to this point here, this circle. That will make this circle have a point on object constraint to this geometry, which will make construction. Right click to cancel the tool, and we can see how that moves with that circle. But what we want to do is attach all of these circles to this one as well. Quite simple to do that. We can add a constraint, and that's the point on object constraint again that we used in this instance. Make sure nothing's selected by clicking on some blank space and pick each of the points. We then select the circle and use the point on object constraint, and these get constrained to this circle. So with certain constraints, we can add multiple objects in one go, saving us time. At the moment, if I close this, we see we have this circle in here. Now, if we try to pad this, this will be invalid. This is an invalid profile. The reason being is that we have these intersections here. If I click on the sketch and try to pad this, you see this goes into error. Results in multiple solids. Let's cancel that. Double click on the sketch. What we need to do is remove the intersections but keep this circle as construction geometry. By clicking on the circle and using this tool here, toggle construction geometry, this converts that circle to construction geometry. So you can see a dotted line now. I can set the diameter of this by clicking on it and using the diameter and setting this to 60 millimeters and hitting enter. We see everything's constrained. Everything's gone a bright green, and this dotted line has changed to a light blue. If I close this now, what we'll see, the construction geometry being made invisible. This allows for a pad. Now I've got one more geometry to add, so I'm going to double click on the sketch, and this time add another circle and place it coincident to this point and bring this out. The diameter of this is 20, so we're going to halve it for the radius and set this to 10 millimeters and hit escape. If I close this now, we can apply the operation. Make sure the sketch is selected and come up to this tool here, pad. This will extrude that sketch and we'll set a length of 5 millimeters and hit enter. We have the base of our model, and now we're going to tackle the second layer. Now it must be stressed that a model can be created in multiple ways. I'm just showing you one technique. We're going to attach a profile to this face. Hover over the face and click once, select it in green. One thing that we mustn't do is click again. That highlights the pad itself. If I select it again, it highlights the body. This is where we can have problems with sketch attachment. If I double click this, click once and click again, the pad is selected. If I try to create a sketch upon there, you can see we get these planes come up. It's not actually attaching to that face. And this is where the problems can occur. If we look at the XY plane, it's in line with the bottom, which we don't want. Let's cancel that. Using the 3D view navigation techniques we learned in a previous video, I'm going to move this so we can see this face here. Select the face once and then create a sketch. We're dropped straight into the sketcher in line with that top view. To create the profile, we're going to create a ring, and this will extrude into the shape that we want. Using the circle again, I'm going to hover over the center. Coincident to that point, click once and bring the circle out. Now, if you don't see this and it's washed out by the color of our face, then we can change the preferences. Just going to right click to cancel the tool, come out to edit, and come down to preferences. If we click on display and come up to light sources, we have the light source here, and we can select the intensity of this light source. Hitting apply will apply it to our scene. So you may see something like this. We move that intensity down and hit apply. Until we see the sketch underneath. Let's hit OK. And we can carry on sketching. We can also adjust the angle so we can see it in there as well. Let's click on top. Let's add another circle using the circle tool. Hover over the center and come out to create the circle. If I pad this now, this will be extruded up to create the feature that we need. But we need to add some dimensions to this. Right click to cancel the tool. We've got our mouse pointer back, and I want to make this circle the same size as this internal circle. This is where importing this edge from the external geometry comes into play. Let's come up to the top and find this tool here. Create external geometry. Clicking on that tool and hovering over the edges, you'll see they will pre-highlight, and we can pull these in. I want this top edge here, so it's best to click on the top, so I'm directly over the top, and select that edge. That will be projected into the sketch, and we can see on the left hand side here that we've got a circle marked in purple. This is external geometry. That's right click to cancel the tool to get the mouse pointer back. Now I can click the internal circle and hover over the external geometry. We can see it's just highlighting in there. You can see that yellow flash. Click that. Those are both selected now. Come up and use the equality constraint. We can now add a dimension to this one using diameter and set that to 35 millimeters and hit enter. We've got the two circles in place. Let's hit close. Making sure that sketch is selected in the tree view, we use the pad. And this creates a pad and adds height to that profile. It automatically fuses the pad with the previous operation to create a solid model. We'll set this to 15 millimeters and hit enter. You'll notice that the previous pad has been made invisible. Another operation has been added and you'll see an arrow showing the tip. Let's draw our focus to the bottom part of the object now. We're going to use the same process and create a profile upon here. Now we could create a profile of a ring again using this external geometry and then using a pad operation again. But we're now going to learn about the pocket. So first, make sure nothing's selected and select that face. Remember, click once. That face is just selected and we'll create a sketch upon it. Using the circle, constrained, coincident to that center point, we come out. Let's set a radius of 45 and hit enter. This is all we need. Let's close our sketch now. Select the sketch. And we'll use a subtractive operation known as a pocket. If we click that, what happens is that our object disappears and we get an error. See, the pocket result has multiple solids, which isn't currently supported at this time. So what's happened? Well, our pocket has gone through the whole of the object. And if we look at a visual example, what's happened, we see we have two rings because we've gone through the bottom and punched through the top, leaving these two rings here. All we need to do is set the depth. So we come over to the left-hand side, we see the length here. We set that to 2 millimeters. As our update view is checked, if we click off, we've now got the result that we need. Let's hit OK. So pockets can be used for holes as well as voids such as this. We're now at the point where we've nearly completed our model. Last thing we're going to add is fillets. So this is a finishing operation. These will smooth off these edges here. The fillet is located here. This is known as a dress up. We can see that in the part design. Apply a dress up feature, fillet, chamfers, drafts and thickness. To use the tool, we can either select the fillet or we can select the edges and then select the fillet tool itself. Let's select the fillet tool from the toolbar whilst nothing's selected. So click on some blank space and click the fillet tool. On the panel, you'll see that the fillet parameters is open with the preview button here. If I click an edge, this top here, it will be added to the left-hand side, but the fillet won't show just yet. So let's select all the edges that we want, these three, and I'm going to select this one as well, but I don't need it. So I'm going to click that and show you how to remove the fillet. At the moment, we're in preview mode. So if I click up, set this to 2 millimeters, the fillet is added. I can change this back down to 1 mil, and we can see what's happened there. Let's remove that edge that we don't want. I believe it was edge 17. If I click on it, you can see the green edge at the top. So it wasn't that one. And I can move my way down the list until it gets to the edge. And right click on it and click remove. That edge has been removed. And I can set this one to 2. All the edges that have been selected have had the fillet applied. There is one thing I want to go into with fillets. If I click on this fillet to bring it up to 3, you see the edge is being consumed. If I go further and it goes beyond this edge here, this opposite edge, it will fail. So if I need to fill it up to this edge here, this is a 5mm height here. This is set to 5mm. I have to back this off to something like 4.99. So it doesn't consume that edge there. We only want a 2mm fillet, so I can come in and set this to 2mm and click off, and that's been applied. Don't worry about this here. This sawtooth appearance, this is just the render. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's hit OK, and the fillet has been applied. Now, this rendering, to clean this up, this is just to do with the properties of the object. If I click on the body, and you'll probably have the data tab open, if I click on the view, we see we have a number of options, and we have this deviation in the object style. At the moment it's 0.5. Let's set this to 0.1. Click off, and that's cleaned up our model. Higher deviation means you have less CPU cycles to deal with the model. Lowering that deviation cleans up the model, cleans up the view, but it requires more compute time to do any modifications. Earlier I mentioned that this model can be created in a number of ways. We can reduce the operations via a different approach, a revolve. As you can see, we have reduced the operations by half. We will talk about how we identify the models that would use this workflow in the next video. So I hope you're enjoying this course, and I hope to see you in the next video. If you like what you see and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via Ko-Fi or Ko-Fi at ko-fi.com/MANG0 or via PayPal at paypal.com/paypalme/DarrenBEstone. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. I thank everybody that's donated so far. It really helps to keep the lights on so I can produce more content and also expand the channel. Thank you for liking, commenting and subscribing to these videos, and I hope to see you again in the next one.